Now, Amantha, you came on the show in September last year and you were almost 3 months into this research. Can you tell us about the research and how it's been since then?
It's been fantastic. So we're now 8 months into running a 4-day work week, and we've been measuring things like productivity and employee engagement, and obviously tracking financial metrics as well. And pretty much everything has gone up very significantly. So we've made the 4-day week permanent.
Well, tell us more about the gift of the fifth.
Yeah, so we called it Gift of the Fifth because basically it's about giving staff the gift of time in the form of having Fridays off if they're able to be productive, fully productive in 4 normal length workdays. So that's why we called it the Gift of the Fifth.
And can you give us some examples of how you increase people's productivity?
Well, meetings can be a really big suck on productivity. I think we all know that. So one thing that we do at Inventium is that we insist that all of our meetings have what we call a PAO, a purpose, agenda, and outcomes. So you're basically not allowed to put a meeting in someone's diary unless you have a PAO, which just acts as a barrier in the way to just going on autopilot and going, oh yeah, this issue is going to be best solved with a meeting. Something else we do with meetings is that we don't default to 30 or 60-minute meetings, which a lot of people do. But what Parkinson's law suggests is that work will expand to fill the time available for its completion, which means if we set 60 minutes for a meeting, it will probably take a full 60 minutes. So instead we ask ourselves, how much time does this meeting actually deserve?
Oh, exactly. Particularly when someone goes down a road and they just keep on talking, you need someone else very politely to say, okay, you have made your point, let's move on. Because
Yes.
Zoom and Skype and all these other forms of meetings that we have these days, it's much more difficult to stop someone from talking because you can't just sort of look across the room.
That's right. Although I think that you can mute them on Zoom, so there is that little trick.
Now what have you found? Have you found a happier workplace?
We have. So certainly productivity has gone up. So that's increased by 26%. And we're already very productive as a team. I mean, a lot of our clients, we actually work with them on improving their productivity. So we were already very productive. Employee engagement was also very high at the outset of the experiment. We were in the top 10% for management consulting, which is our industry. That's now risen to the top 1% of our industry in terms of how engaged staff are. We also found that energy levels increased by 21% and stress reduced by 18%. And I think this is quite phenomenal because this was in the back half of 2020. A lot of our team were in Melbourne. A lot of us were locked down. So to increase all those metrics, we were pretty wrapped with all that.
So what sets other organisations apart and how long does it take to make this plan and to see the productivity increase?
So for us, we found that it happened quite quickly. So when we launched it at the beginning of the financial year on the 1st of July, I ran a session with the team around some additional productivity tips and hacks, sort of a lot of the stuff that I talk about on the productivity podcast that I host, which is How I Work. So there were certain things that we put in place straight away, like some of the things with meetings, for example, and also being strict with checking email. Like the average person does a just check of their email every 6 minutes, which is crazy. How anyone can get sort of deep focused work done in the age of digital distraction is quite a challenge. So instead at Inventium, we're quite strict on just checking email a handful of times a day rather than dipping in and dipping out. So those productivity improvements came very quickly, I would say.
How important are people as a resource?
They're critical, and certainly in the business that Inventium is in, where our people are out helping our clients to be more productive and be more innovative. It's the people that are having an impact. So, I think having happy, healthy, productive staff is just so critical these days with business.
And multitasking, what are your thoughts on that?
Terrible. Multitasking is terrible. So we are big proponents of monotasking at Inventium. So what research has found, particularly from Professor David Meyer, is that when we multitask or task switch our way through a couple of things, like let's just say we're writing a report and then we're dipping into our inbox, for example, things take 40% longer. So if you extrapolate that out, if you're currently multitasking your way through an average workday. And let's just say you work 9 to 5. If you just start monotasking, focus on one thing at the one time, theoretically you can leave work at 2:30 in the afternoon having achieved the exact same output just through that little change.
Yeah, I'll have to do that this afternoon and sit and watch all the races and all the sport. And I'll just tell my wife at the moment, socially, I'm monotasking. Now, that's a little bit of comedy. What sets organisations apart from others, do you think?
Look, I think in terms of organisations where the 4-day week would work really well is that I think there needs to be a high level of trust between management and staff. Certainly we give the team at Inventium a lot of autonomy. We employ people that are amazing, that we put a lot of trust in. But they've earned that trust because they're, absolutely amazing performers and amazing people. I think where things could get problematic if there is a lack of trust between management and staff. I can see that in those situations, the 4-day week model might not run as smoothly.
Yeah, because we are hearing a lot about leadership and having the empathy and not so much the skills, but it's about character, and you can learn skills, but it's hard to learn character. So do you agree with that kind of philosophy?
I do. It can be challenging. Certainly one thing that leaders need to focus on doing is creating an environment that has high psychological safety. I'd say it's something that a lot of leaders are thinking about, but essentially you need to create an environment where people feel comfortable being themselves and expressing their views and feel okay with failure and occasionally stuffing up. I think environments where there is low psychological safety, people feel really scared, and when people are acting out of fear, they're not going to do their best work and they're not going to put their best ideas forward either.
Oh, you're so right. You've got to love your mistakes. In this game, having done this for a while, you've got to love your mistakes, because if you don't, you'll be just absolutely brought to a halt by them. Founder of Inventium, Dr. Amantha Imber, lovely to talk to you.
Thanks for having me.